They went into the darkness seeking a brief escape, a quiet afternoon adventure. They were 12 boys, members of the Wild Boars soccer team, and their young coach. The Tham Luang Cave System, a serpentine shadow beneath northern Thailand, promised a cool respite from the midday sun. They entered on June 23, 2018, their laughter echoing briefly before the blackness consumed them. They did not know that above them, the skies were tearing open. What followed was not a simple rainstorm. It was the sudden, violent arrival of the monsoon season, weeks earlier than predicted. Water did not merely drip into Tham Luang, it cascaded, it surged, it roared. The cave, which had been a haven, instantly became a throat closing around them. The exit, their only way back to light and air, vanished beneath a furious, churning flood. Imagine that moment of dawning horror. You are 4 kilometers deep, miles from sunlight. You climb higher and higher onto slick, jagged rocks, the ceiling pressing down, listening to the relentless, thunderous pulse of the rising water. The air thickens with dread. You are not trapped in a room. You are entombed in liquid stone, slowly awaiting suffocation. When the first alarms were raised, the world barely noticed. But for the families gathered outside the mouth of the cave, the fear was immediate and paralyzing. They stood in the unrelenting downpour, watching the muddy torrent spill out of the entrance, knowing that every gallon of that water represented a minute lost, a life sinking deeper into the unknown. Tham Luang had transformed from a geological formation into a hungry monster. The initial rescue attempts were futile, bordering on suicidal. Local divers faced zero visibility. The water was not clear. It was liquid clay, opaque and heavy, moving with the force of a river. They navigated entirely by touch, feeling for guide ropes in the smothering blackness, where disorientation meant instant death. The passages of Tham Luang are narrow, twisting bottlenecks that defy human movement even in ideal conditions. With the current surging, it was like swimming through a pressurized labyrinth. The cave had swallowed 13 souls, and now it was claiming the sanity of those trying to retrieve them. This was when the international call went out, a desperate plea for those who specialized in the impossible. They came from across the globe, these cave divers. They were an elite, eccentric brotherhood who understood the physics of deep, submerged Earth. They were not looking for survivors. They were searching for ghosts. The clock ticked. Days bled into one another. 4 days, 5 days. The boys had no food, no light beyond what their fading torch offered. They were huddled in the darkness, sustained only by the faint hope that someone, somewhere, knew they were still fighting. The most terrifying element was the sheer unpredictability of the environment. Every inch gained by the divers was hard-fought. They laid miles of guide rope, hauling heavy air tanks through passages so tight they had to exhale fully just to squeeze their bodies through the rock. The risk was constant. A misplaced fin, a ruptured line, a slip of the regulator, and they too would become permanent residents of the cave's watery grave. On the 10th day, a small miracle arrived, delivered by 2 British cave diving legends. They pushed past the notorious T-junction, beyond the massive cavern known as Pattaya Beach, which was now completely submerged. They swam 4 kilometers deep, guided by intuition and grim determination. Then, they heard it. The faint sound of human life, not the echo of water, but something else. They surfaced on a muddy ledge, a tiny air-filled chamber known as Chamber 9, and shone their powerful lights into the gloom. 13 pairs of wide, sunken eyes looked back. They were alive, emaciated, weak, but alive. The moment the diver surfaced and spoke those world-changing words, "How many of you are there?" the relief was immense. But that relief was immediately crushed by the horrific reality of the logistics. Finding them was the easy part. Getting them out was the nightmare. They were 4 kilometers away. The journey was almost entirely submerged, involving pitches of extreme diving difficulty that even experienced professionals struggled with. The boys were weak, untrained swimmers, many terrified of the water. The world realized they had traded one slow death by starvation for a sudden, violent death by drowning. The options were brutal. Wait months for the water to recede, hoping the boys could survive the cold and the darkness, relying entirely on precarious supply lines. Or attempt an immediate extraction, navigating the 4-kilometer gauntlet. The supply line immediately proved the deadly risk. A highly decorated former Thai Navy SEAL diver, Saman Kunan, tragically ran out of air while returning from a supply run to the boys. He died in the dark water. The cave had claimed its first rescuer. This was not a rescue mission. It was a war against physics, and the odds were tilting toward oblivion. The world held its breath as the impossible plan was hatched. It was radical. It was terrifying. It was the only way. The boys would not swim out. They would be carried out. Each boy would be lightly sedated, numbed by ketamine to prevent panic and thrashing in the narrow tunnels. They would be fitted with full face masks, placed on a sled-like stretcher or held close to the diver, and transported through the murky darkness, inch by terrifying inch. This required a level of trust bordering on the supernatural. They were placing their lives in the hands of strangers, anesthetized, unable to fight or scream, hoping they would wake up on the other side. The sheer audacity of the plan generated paralyzing fear among the command team. If a mask failed, if a regulator snagged, if the current shifted, a child would drown, senseless and alone, miles beneath the surface. The extraction was executed over 3 excruciating days. Every hour was a silent battle against panic and the relentless cave environment. Divers moved with agonizing slowness, their only connection to the outside world the thin guide rope and the intermittent sound of their own breathing. The visibility remained near zero. They were pulling precious, unconscious cargo through a liquid tomb. On the final day, the last boy and the coach emerged into the dim daylight. 18 days after entering the shadows, all 13 souls had defied the odds. The cave, which had waited patiently to claim them, was cheated of its prize. It was a feat of human endeavor and logistical genius, yes. But standing beneath the monsoon clouds, watching them carried away, one could only feel the cold echo of the horror they had endured. They had faced the suffocating blackness, the relentless water, and the chilling promise of death. Tham Luang reminds us that the earth can be a beautiful cage, and sometimes the greatest miracles are born from the darkest, most terrifying depths.